Good morning, everyone. And of course, if we were in the school, you would say, "Good morning, Reverend Nicholas." But we're not in school. You're at home, and I'm here in my front garden, next to the apple tree that I planted when I moved here, in front of my vegetable patch there behind me. Can you just make out the school in the background, just next to where I live? Seemed ages ago now than when we were in school. Do you remember my last assembly when I was there? I was talking about the special days that lead up to Easter in the Christian calendar. I spoke about Pancake Day, the day before the beginning of Lent, a traditional day for using up the special foodstuffs like eggs and butter and cream because people were giving up those things for Lent. Pancake Day is always on a Tuesday, Shrove Tuesday, as it's the day before the beginning of Lent, which is always on a Wednesday, Ash Wednesday. I said about Christians having the sign of the cross made on their foreheads on Ash Wednesday. And that's of course why it's called Ash Wednesday. And I said about Lent being a time of preparation for Easter, and how people might give up something for Lent, like chocolate, and give the money they've saved to a charity they wanted to support. I said how Lent lasts 40 days, and I reminded you of the 40 days that I spent in the desert a few years ago. I've spoken about that with you before, and shown you this picture of my camel. I wanted to spend 40 days in the desert, because we read in the Bible that Jesus spent 40 days in the desert. And the 40 days of Lent remind us of that. I said how the Sunday before Easter is called Palm Sunday, because it recalls the time when Jesus entered the city of Jerusalem, and people cheered him on and cut palm leaves from the trees to wave them about in celebration. Nowadays, Christians make palm crosses from palm leaves, and we give them out to people at church on Palm Sunday. And I said how when Jesus entered Jerusalem, he was riding on a donkey. And when I showed you this picture of donkeys, I said about one sort of donkey always having a cross on their back. Who knows why they have a cross on their backs? It's all to do with genetics and evolution, and maybe something to do with camouflage. In the same way that a zebra always has stripes. But though we don't know exactly why a donkey has a cross on its back, it's still a lovely image for Christians, because the cross is the Christian symbol. And it's a nice way of remembering the Bible story of Jesus entering Jerusalem. The Friday after Palm Sunday is the Friday before Easter, Good Friday. And I said how it's the day on which Christians remember how Jesus died on a cross. And that's why the cross is the Christian sign. And that's why we began Lent with the ash cross. And that's why Christians make palm crosses. It's called Good Friday because God is good, so it's like God Friday or Holy Friday, a bit different from how we use the word good these days. But Christians believe that Jesus' death was not the end. On Easter Day, Christians celebrate the truth that Jesus lives on. If you remember, I showed you this picture of an Easter egg tree. You rather liked it. It's a lovely sign of new life and hope and celebration. Do you remember when Easter Day was? It seems ages ago now. Easter Day was April the 12th. And I want to remind you about another Christian festival I've spoken about before to you. One that comes at the end of this month. It's called Pentecost. Pentecost is rather a strange name, but that's because it comes from Greek. And a lot of our words come from Greek or from Latin. And I'm going to show you something else that has a name that comes from Greek. Do you know what this shape is called? Any thoughts? Of course, if you're in assembly at school, you'll be putting your hands up. You're good at that, not shouting out. But you can shout out now if you know what it's called. Perhaps you already have. It's just that I can't hear you because you're there and I'm here. So I'm going to tell you what it's called. Perhaps you already know. It's called a pentagon. Penta is the Greek for 5 and gon is the Greek for angle. It's a shape that has 5 angles, which also means that it's a shape with 5 sides. So using the Greek language, we call it a pentagon, a 5-angled or 5-sided shape. And that gives us the clue to the word Pentecost. So as I just said, penta means 5 in Greek, and adding cost on the end of it is like adding a naught on in Greek. So Pentecost means 50. And Pentecost is the 50th day of Easter. Now, here's a question for you. If Easter was April the 12th this year, and April the 12th is the first day of Easter, when is Pentecost this year? Now, if we were in school, you'd all be putting your hands up. You always amaze me with your answers and with your math skills. But we're not, so I'll tell you. Starting on April the 12th, as the first day of Easter, we have 19 days left in April. We add 31 onto that to make the 50, and that makes Pentecost May the 31st this year, the last day of the month. We read in the Bible how on the day of Pentecost, tongues of fire appeared on the heads of the followers of Jesus. They had gathered in Jerusalem to celebrate Pentecost. Jewish people from all over the world had gathered there to celebrate, because Pentecost was a Jewish celebration before it was a Christian one. And the disciples began to speak in all sorts of different languages, so that everyone present could understand them. They were all united, not divided. And fire is a symbol of love, because it gives warmth and light. And so it's also a symbol of God, because God is light and love. So the message of Pentecost is a message of people being united in love, rather than divided by difference. And if you remember, the message of people being more united than divided is one that I've spoken to you before about. This is Jo Cox, standing outside the Houses of Parliament. In 2015, she was elected a Member of Parliament, but was tragically killed in 2016. She said in her very first speech to all the other MPs in the House of Commons, "We are far more united and have far more in common than that which divides us." And I feel the question for us today is, will we emerge from this crisis, from this lockdown, a more united, a less divided people? Will we have learnt something? Will we see life a little bit differently? I feel for myself that I've begun to see and hear things a little differently. Standing in Burstow churchyard, just down the road, with no planes straight overhead as usual, I've heard the woodpecker drumming on the wooden spire. And in what seems to me less polluted skies, I've seen Venus shining beautifully and brightly in the evening sky. And I've seen my local shopkeepers in a new light, working so hard all through this crisis to keep us supplied with our food and essential medicines. I've had a real sense that as a local community, as a nation, as a world, as a planet, that we're all in this together. And I've seen that as other things fall away, what is left is what really matters. The spirit of Pentecost, the spirit of love. That we really are far more united, and we really have far more in common than that which divides us.